Have you ever thought about all of the things that make up a violent juvenile defender? Well, today I'll be discussing those things. I'll be talking about many things such as the youth psychology and the possible link to untreated mental disorders. Some examples of violence in juveniles are fighting, bullying, threats with weapons, and gang-related violence. Only sometimes are there more serious crimes like murder. The minimum age of criminal responsibility is defined as the age at which a person can be charged with a criminal offense and processed within the criminal justice system. As of 2010, in Georgia, the minimum age is 13 years old at the time of the act. At such a young age, a younger child's brain is still very immature. Their reasoning and judgment is still being developed. Young kids just want the consistency of adult attention and responsiveness is what they see as most important. If a child sees that his social environment will respond inconsistently, he is more likely to continue behavior, hoping he will get away with it. Research has shown that a teenager's brain doesn't look like a fully matured brain until they reach their 20s. They are still experiencing physical and psychological changes. These years are considered their developmental stages, and their behavior during this time can be characterized by impulses, risk-taking, escalating emotions, and a lack of thought about the consequences. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, mental health includes a person's psychological, mental, and social well-being, and affects how a person feels, thinks, and acts. Mental disorders relate to issues or difficulties a person may experience with his or her psychological, emotional, and social well-being. Mental health disorders are prevalent among youth in the juvenile justice system. A meta-analysis by Vincent and colleagues suggested that at some juvenile justice contact points, as many as 70% of youth have a diagnosable mental health problem. Youth who commit one type of violent offense tend to commit others. They also tend to commit nonviolent offenses and have co-occurring problems such as substance abuse and sexual promiscuity. There is a connection from childhood aggression to youth violence. The major long-term predictors are biological factors like low heart rate, individual factors like high impulsiveness and low intelligence, and family factors like poor supervision, harsh discipline, a violent parent, a young mother, or a broken family. There are a lot of risk factors that have an influence on at-risk kids. Poor social skills is one factor. Social skills can be a problem because it can affect how kids interact with others. Kids that have problems with social skills are also going to face trouble with self-control and mental health issues like anxiety and depression. These two things are what is most common in violent juvenile defenders. Insecure attachment is the next factor. This factor is important because these kids are left with nothing and without one of the most important foundations for their healthy developments. Children that have a history of severe attachment disorder are more susceptible to develop aggressive, controlling, and conduct disordered behaviors, which are likely to contribute to the development of an antisocial personality. A difficult temperament is the next risk factor. This raises a lot of concerns because a person never knows their next move. Next is early substance abuse. This is a risk factor because when they start at an early age, their brains are not developed, so these substances affect them differently. Last is that they have experienced child abuse. Experiencing something like this can cause anger and confusion, which can cause them to lash out. There are many treatment programs for juvenile defenders. It is said that treatment in public facilities, custodial institutions, and the juvenile justice system was less effective than the other alternatives. Treatment done in community setting may be more effective. Youth violence is a serious public health problem and an adverse childhood experience that can have a long-term impact on health and well-being. Youth violence is preventable. There are 6 important ways to help reduce violence in juveniles. These strategies are intended to shape individual behaviors as well as relationship, community, and societal factors that influence risk and protective factors for violence. First, there has to be promoting family environments that support healthy development. Next is to provide quality education early on in life. Strengthening the youth skills is the next important way to reduce violence in juveniles. Next is to connect youth to caring adults and activities such as mentoring programs and after-school programs. Next is to create protective community environments that modify physical and social environments, reducing exposure to community-level risk, and have street outreach and community norm change. Lastly is to intervene to lessen harms and prevent the future risk. The first way that juvenile cases are different than adult cases is that in adult court the defendant is charged by using a document called a complaint, whereas in juvenile court the child is charged with a document called a petition. The second way is that when juvenile cases go to trial, the child is not afforded a jury trial like in an adult court. Rather, one judge is the finder of fact at a trial. The next difference is that in adult court, if the defendant is found guilty, they are convicted, whereas in juvenile court, the child is adjudicated delinquent. Next is in adult court, the defendant has all of his or her hearings in the county which they have been charged. In juvenile cases, the case is charged in the county where the offense took place, and that is where the case will be tried or plea of guilty will be entered. Next is the system in juvenile court is much more focused on the best interests of the child and trying to make sure that they are rehabilitated prior to becoming an adult. The emphasis is on treatment, therapy, and education rather than the punishment. The next difference is in adult court, there are certain legal concepts that only a prosecutor can offer, like a continuance for dismissal or a stay of adjudication. In juvenile court, the judge can dispose of a case in either of these ways, even if the prosecutor doesn't agree. The eighth difference is that in adult court, all hearings are open to the public. However, juvenile court hearings are closed to the public and typically only the lawyers, probation, the child, and family are present in the courtroom. The ninth difference is that while the client in a juvenile matter is the child, these types of cases generally involve the entire family. It is important to involve the parents or guardians to help the child follow through with the lawyer's advice. The final difference is that a juvenile may apply for an expungement at any time, whereas in adult court there are many restrictions on how soon one can file. Joshua Phillips, 15 years old at the time of a crime, was tried as an adult. He killed his 8-year-old neighbor, Maddie Clifton. His mother found her waterbed leaking. When she checked it, she discovered the body of Maddie, where she had been for 7 days before. He was convicted of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Florida's law does not allow the death penalty for killers under 16 years old. In 2017, he was resentenced to life in prison again, with the opportunity to have it reviewed for another 25 years.